Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us on the 6 p.m. newscast on La Television. The month we are broadcasting live from our studios here in the country economic capital, Douala. We'll begin the news with breaking news from the President of the Republic, who has ordered for the release of 333 persons arrested within the context of the Anglophone crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. On his Facebook page, President Paul Biya said in his word, "I have ordered the discontinuance of proceedings pending before the military tribunal against 333 persons arrested for misdemeanors in connection with the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions." This comes after all at the close of the national dialogue in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé. Still talking about the Grand National Dialogue, some 6 ex-separatist fighters were presented to the press today at the Yaoundé Conference Center, coming from different divisions in the northwest region of Cameroon at the political capital today to take part in the Grand National Dialogue. Details in the following report. Another set of 9 ex-separatist fighters from the northwest region resurfaced at a press conference in the ongoing Grand National Dialogue in the Yaoundé Conference Center Thursday.
And we pray for the government to forgive us. We have sinned against God. We have sinned against the nation. We are sorry. Take us back as your children. We were your children. The government abandoned us. Some people from the diaspora, they doctrine us because we feel that we were abandoned and we listen to that advice. Look where we find ourselves today. But thank God for this long-awaited day that we have been fighting for. I thank God for the governor of the Northwest and his collaborators, that they have been working day and night to see that peace return to Northwest as normal. Now, as we here have come for the dialogue, we believe that as the head of state have forgiven us and take us back as the prodigal son, we help the government to see that peace should return to this country. Thanks be to God and thanks be to our section president, Dan Fumingala Gerard, that he has been working so much in Dongamatu, restlessly.
The formers said they pick up arms against the government because they thought they have been abandoned.
With tears in my eyes, we are your children. We went to the bush. You people abandoned us. We feel that we were maltreated as Anglophone. We thought that fighting the government will solve the problem. But thank God that today God has touched our hearts, our government, we as individuals. The national dialogue has been called. Though we are standing here with blood on our hands, our brothers have been killed, the Butsa. Property have been damaged. What then can we say? We only say, God, help us.
He breaks in tears after acknowledging that they have been misled and promised to work with the government in order to bring peace in the country.
So many people have gone. Our sisters have gone, property. Let this dialogue be inclusive and sincere. Please, you should not abandon us again. Look where we find ourselves today. But I know that God will see us through. Thank you very much.
As the Grand National Dialogue launched by the head of state entered the last phase Friday, Cameroonians at home and abroad are hoping that concrete solutions will be taken in order to put an end to the Anglophone crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. resurfaced conference that is the An emotional scene was observed at the Yaoundé Conference Center, where the Grand National Dialogue is unfolding as former separatist fighters general resurfaced with series of demands to the government.
Happy killing our brothers and sisters, pointing fingers here and there. Let us acknowledge that this is time for change. Let us bring peace back to our homeland. And lastly, let us see how we can reconstruct the villages that are destroyed.
With tears rolling down his cheeks, General Captured and Destroyed, as he was called, confirmed the hardship those in the bushes are enduring. He says if the government of Cameroon can adhere to their demands, they can work hand in gloves with the government in order to bring back peace in the nation. He added that despite involving in gun battle against the Cameroon Defense Forces in the southwest region, they are still Cameroonians and can hope for nothing but a return to normalcy in the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon. The ex-generals of the Amazonian movement was accompanied with 4 other generals at a press conference: Commander Kwesi, Ezomo Custodian of Shrine, No Mercy, and Commander Champion. They have asked government and separatists to give peace a chance after granting a press conference. The ex-ambassador general were received by the Prime Minister and head of government, Joseph Diongouti. They equally joined various commissions where they are expected to give concrete proposals that will end the socio-political unrest in the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon. And Grand National Dialogue, that is at the 2019, the 8 commissions are due to submit a report which will include their proposals and recommendations for peace and restoration in the country. Details of this report with Andita Bevian Akebe.
The 8 commissions of the Measure National Dialogue are expected to submit their proposals and recommendations on how to restore peace on Cameroon's 2 English-speaking regions today, to be adopted by the Prime Minister Joseph Diongouti, the chairperson of the national event. Going by today's program of the Measure National Dialogue, the restitutions of works of different commissions would hold under the chairmanship of the general coordinator of the event, Prime Minister Joseph Diongouti. Then will follow the adoption of the general report of the Measure National Dialogue. For the meantime, at the Yaoundé Conference Center, where the debates are taking place, commissions are presently deliberating on their final report to present to the Prime Minister today. Speaking to the press yesterday evening, the spokesperson of the Measure National Dialogue, Dr. George Ewane, disclosed the commissions had completed their work, with some having their resolutions already drafted out. All the different commissions are expected to bring forth proposals on their different domains that will respectively help bring a possible end to the ongoing socio-political crisis. As the final papers and roundups are being done on the last but one day of the Measure National Dialogue, it is a hope that the resolutions adopted will be for good.
And on to something else, 3 persons have died and 16 others severely wounded in a road accident that occurred in the Ndobo neighborhood, that is in the Douala 4 Support Division. Details of this report once more with Andita Bevian Akebe.
A road accident that occurred in the night of Tuesday, breaking Wednesday, October 2nd, 2019, at the Ndobo neighborhood in the Douala 4 subdivision, littoral region of the country, left 3 people dead and 16 others severely injured. According to reports, the accident involved a Biko Express 30-seat bus and a heavy-duty truck traveling from Douala to the west region of Cameroon. The accident report says occurred when the 30-seater Biko Express bus crashed with the heavy-duty truck at the Ndobo neighborhood around a particular company in Bonaberi, Douala 4 subdivision. Due to the violent nature of the crash, 3 people reportedly died on the spot and 16 others seriously injured. The latter were transported into the Bonasama hospital where they are currently attended to. Accident in Cameroon has become a major problem to the Cameroonian government as the Minister of Transport in his ministry has been trying its utmost best to avoid road accidents. From the suspension of agencies with frequent accidents recorded to the implementation of the respect of road sign codes, but yet the Cameroon society suffers with a great number of accidents every year.
Let's now talk about today, the 3rd of October 2019, which has been celebrated as International Day of All People, with the theme being the journey of age equality. It is a day which gives an opportunity for all people to be celebrated as well to be known. Details of this report with Leonga Beatrice Fonyunga.
International Day of All People is celebrated every year. This day is celebrated to make certain the welfare of elderly persons as well as to enroll their significant involvement in the society to get promoted from their knowledge and ability. The plan of action on aging was adopted by the World Assembly of Aging to encourage the society development for all age. It was first celebrated on the 14th of December in the year 1990 by the United Nations General Assembly. It was also celebrated to encourage senior citizens who are highly vulnerable, with many becoming disabled and facing discrimination. These old people are known for playing a great role in the society as caretakers and custodians of traditions. This year's theme, which says the journey to age equality, is aimed at bringing awareness to the urgency of coping with existing and preventing future age inequality. According to the World Health Organization, aging presents both challenges and opportunities. Thus, there will be an increase in demand for primary health care and long-term care that will require a larger and better trained workforce. There is an intensive need for the environment to be made friendly. However, societies that adapt to this changing demographic investment in health aging can enable individuals to live both longer and healthier lives and for the society to reap the dividends.
We now take you to the west region of the country, where 7 people have been assigned to collect, process and preserve archival documents. This was during a former court hearing in the Mifi High Court, where the pledge to always maintain professional secrecy. Details of this report with Vilin Ama Aku.
These new archivists were recently appointed to comply with the Spirit of Archives Act of December 19, 2000 in Cameroon, which relates to the management of confidential data of the state, that was slated by the Prime Minister and Head of Government, Joseph John Goute, on the 28th of March 2018. During the solemn ceremony of oath-taking, the prosecutor, in his indictment, reminded them about the importance and delicacy of their mission in view of the fact that the archives constitute the soul of a country. In the same light, the president of the Mifi High Court asked them to jealously preserve the archives and also on how to keep professional secrecy. The legislator provided a sentence of imprisonment of 5 to 10 years and a fine of 25,000 to 200,000 francs against anyone who makes public the archival documents without authorization. These archivists, after noticing the importance of the archives and becoming aware of the task entrusted on them, they pledged before God and men to work jealously for the preservation of the archives and also to keep their contents secret if no text obliged them to communicate. It should be noted that these sworn archivists came from different departments, such as the Regional Delegation of Arts and Culture for the West, the Departmental Delegation of Arts and Culture of Menwa, the Urban Community of Bafoussam, the District Municipality of Bafoussam II, and the Bafoussam Regional Hospital.
And on to our sport page, the Confederation of African Football has joined the list of the African Cup of Nations Under-23, which will kick off from the 8th to the 22nd of November 2019 to the host country, Egypt. Once more, Vilin Ama tells us more.
After the final qualifying round of the Under-23 African Cup of Nations 2019, 8 teams have composted their tickets for the finals. The draw of the competition was made and these nations were fixed on their fate. Beautiful posters in prospect for the third edition of this continental tournament, especially in Pool A, which is considered that of death. In Pool A, Egypt, who is the host country, will face Mali, Cameroon and Ghana for a fight in the Cairo International Stadium for the 3 teams who will qualify for the Olympics in Japan. Group B is composed of Nigeria, who will tackle South Africa, Zambia and Ivory Coast in order to secure a place in the 2020 Japan Olympic Games. It should be noted that the 3 medal winning teams are those who will qualify for the final phase of the 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo. This African Cup of Nations Under-23 is expected to kick off on the 8th of November and the tournament will also serve as the qualification for the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games. However, all nations that will participate in the African Cup of Nations Under-23 are not allowed to use players above the age limit, but each team will be permitted to use 3 over-age players in the Olympics.
And news out of the country as protesters in Hong Kong fight against what they see as growing control from Beijing divisions are growing in their own homes. Details of these with Al Jazeera News.
Like many of the young protesters in Hong Kong, Redmond's involvement has caused tension at home. After a particularly violent protest in August, his emotions boiled over when his parents said the protesters were paid.
They were shouting at me, saying that I'd been brainwashed. I told them it was they who I brainwashed, starting when they were young by the Communist Party. That night I packed all my things and went to my friend's house to stay.
Redmond's difficult situation is not new nor unique. Ivan Lam began protesting 5 years ago during the Umbrella Movement. He served jail time for his actions back then. Now 25, he's the chairman of a pro-democracy political party, but still has a tense relationship with his father, who used to work for the police department.
I think it's a very personal issue. For different people, they have different ways to face it. So for me, I'm trying to avoid any conversation that will trigger the conflicts. And some of the youngsters, I think they are braver than me. They may have directly face their parents.
People who support the Hong Kong government and police are referred to as blue, and those who support the protest movement are identified as yellow. Now, while as most of this internal family tension are between blue and yellow members, there's also yellow on yellow tension.
Ada Coate is part of a volunteer group that counsels protesters. She's spoken with a mother and a son who both support the protesters. The mother believes in the movement, but does not want her son facing danger on the streets. The son says he's doing it for the next generation.
Actually, the young adult, he really doesn't want his young cousin living in Hong Kong like him, worry about what color of shirts need to be wear and to avoid violence in the future.
For 20-year-old Redmond's future, he hopes that he can find common ground with his parents. He just returned home after being gone for a month.
Maybe one day I can find a different approach to try and change their point of view.
But in the meantime, he'll continue to go out to the streets and protest. He's just not going to talk about it at home. Scott Heidler, Al Jazeera, Hong Kong.
The youth unemployment rate in Judah has risen to almost 40% despite having a high number of university graduates. Al Jazeera News tells us more in the following story.
After Abir graduated from university, she struggled to find a job she wanted before starting over and finding a new profession.
For 7 years, I tried to get a job either in the public sector or the private sector, but there was nothing. So I took a beauty training course. Then I took another course on business and launched my own beauty salon. You have to do something that will actually get you a job instead of traditional fields.
Her hometown of Madaba, a short drive from the capital Amman, attracts tourists to see mosaics that are thousands of years old. But tourism isn't enough to provide jobs. The area has the highest unemployment rate in the country, which civil society organizations want reduced.
We design course topics based on market research in each city based on what each market needs. In Madaba, the local market needs employees who work in human resources, beauty salons and fix mobile phones.
Jordanians expect more from their government, which is saddled with public debt of around 95% of its GDP. Government spending cuts and austerity measures were imposed last year to secure a $723 million bailout from the International Monetary Fund. The cutbacks have caused discontentment, especially among young Jordanians. Youth unemployment is 39%, and a quarter of university graduates are jobless.
There are many reasons why the labor market is struggling, some of them out of the government's control. Jordan needs help to stimulate its economy and a workforce in high-paying jobs that pay their taxes.
The government says it's rolling out new initiatives to create jobs, especially for the kingdom's young people, considered to be one of the most educated populations in the region. Economists say Jordan's government and society as a whole needs to stop favoring some professions. That's because the market is saturated and jobs aren't being found easily, even for highly qualified graduates.
We have a generation in waiting. Today we have very high unemployment rate among engineers and medical doctors and pharmacists. So why are we sending through an official policy more students to study these subjects, knowingly in advance that they won't find jobs? So I think this is one major public policy flaw that the government has to deal with immediately.
Recent research by his firm showed that a third of Jordanian adults want to leave the country because they have no hope for their future. That total has doubled since protests in Madaba and other cities 8 years ago against the rising cost of living. Andrew Chappelle, Al Jazeera, Amman.
And staying with Al Jazeera, Lebanon is being criticized for its decision to send back refugees or Syrian refugees who arrived after April without proper documentation. The report.
These refugees may be safe from the war in neighboring Syria, but there is little that protects them in Lebanon. Leaving the camp to find work has become a risk. They live in fear of arrest and deportation due to tightening restrictions by various government bodies, which insists returning to Syria is safe.
I entered legally in 2012, but I haven't renewed my residency since. I need to pay $200 for every year, and I don't have the money. I also need a sponsor, which I can't find.
The Lebanese restrictions began in 2015 when doors closed to Syrian refugees. New visa and residency regulations were imposed. Now, Syrians who entered without proper documentation after April the 24th this year are being deported. Rights groups dismiss assertions by Lebanon's leaders that the restrictions are about improving security and protecting the economy.
The General Security has admitted that they have deported over 2,000 Syrian refugees in the last month.
Human rights groups say some of those deported entered before the cut-off date and weren't given the chance to consult a lawyer or challenge the order in courts. They also accuse Lebanon of putting those Syrians at risk by handing them to the government in Damascus, accused of arbitrary arrests and torture that has led to deaths in detention.
One of the individuals that was deported was a prominent opposition reporter. He wrote publicly for opposition media in his own name, and of course, upon transfer to Syria, he was arrested by the Syrian authorities.
The UN confirmed deportations are happening, and there could be more because the majority of refugees lack proper legal documentation.
We're trying to speed up the renewal of residency, which will give people a legal status that enable them then to have all their civil documents, to not be arrested, to not be deported. So that's very important.
Some international organizations are accusing Lebanon of violating its obligations to protect those fleeing persecution and violence. They sent representatives to meet officials here to find a way to stop the deportations.
But when someone calls us and is in the airport and they're stuck, and we know if they go back they're going to be killed, that's one violation too many.
Anxiety is growing among the almost 1 million registered Syrian refugees, who, along with rights groups, believe the deportation order is part of a wider government crackdown that is about making their life increasingly harder to pressure them to leave. Zana Khadr, Al Jazeera, Beirut. Beirut.
It is with our report that we draw the curtains on today's edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on La Télévision du Monde. But before we leave, just to remind you that the President of the Republic has ordered for the release of 333 persons arrested within the context of the armed conflict in Cameroon's northwest and southwest regions on his Facebook page. That is today. President Paul Biya said in his word, "I have ordered the discontinuance of proceedings pending before the military tribunal against 333 persons arrested for misdemeanors in connection with the crisis in the northwest and southwest region." It should be noted that this is coming at the close of the grand national dialogue in the nation's political capital. And that brings us to the end of the 6 p.m. newscast. Stay with us for more details and more information on our TV. Goodbye.